So I'm just in the process of sharing my screen. Um, Lucy, do you mind actually letting me know that everyone's good and we can see it and I can get started?
Yes, we see it. I see it.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you guys so much. So thank you, Hackergal, for asking me to present this educational experience for you all. So today I want to go with the theme that there is power in diversity. So the specific exercise is around our values and understanding our values. So before we get started, I just wanted to introduce myself officially. I am a Black Indigenous woman of color. I also identify as she and her. I'm an educator. I have a passion for social justice and mental health. I am a dog lover, so you may hear my dog try to chime in and join the exercise. Just ignore him. And I love hip hop and classical music. I like to live on both ends of the human experience. So because I am a teacher, I wanted to share you guys my learning outcomes for today. So today we're going to cover some important things to know, like what is diversity and what is anti-racism. We'll look a little bit at in-group versus out-group. So what does this mean and how does it affect us? What are our values really? Why do our values matter? What are your values? And how we can use our values in our everyday life to help us become more self-aware. So some important things to know before we get started. So diversity is about differences. Diversity of culture, language, religion, and a host of other factors are increasingly common in our society right now. So diversity creates the potential for misunderstandings and sometimes even conflict stemming from the differences we make and when we make sense of our world today. So that means our differences sometimes can cause us to butt heads. So, oh, sorry about that. So a part of wanting a community that embraces diversity means we should have a community that is anti-racist, which means a community that stands against racism, period. So what is in-group and out-group? What does this mean and how does it affect us? So when we're talking about society, often we're talking about these social constructs that have a lot to do with our everyday lives. Even though they're invisible, think of them as boxes and how we process what's going on in our everyday life, things that impact our lives through what happens in our community to sometimes what even happens within our family at the dinner table. So there is something called an in-group versus an out-group. And this often talks about positions of power. And when I say power, I mean who can make decisions, who's structuring our education systems, our banking systems, our political systems, who's controlling access to different resources. So historically in Canada, that was Europeans because they settled on Indigenous land and then they colonized, which means like they made societies for themselves. And because they kind of made this group of them, they controlled different resources. So then we have like the out group, which is some say like subordinate. And this is just the group that doesn't have as much ability to call the shots or to access power, which are things like resources. So what this really means is people attach meaning to different group values, attitudes, and behavior. So for example, like to be in group might mean to be like Christian, and that if you're not Christian, you're bad, which we know that that's not how things work. Diversity means everyone gets a seat at the table no matter what. But when we start to attach power and we decide who is what based on values and beliefs, that's when things get a little messy. So these are things like good values or worthy values are attached to like the dominant group or the group in power. And then the less desirable values are then attached to the less dominant group. So what this does is it actually creates prejudice. And this actually doesn't celebrate differences. What it does is it makes differences bad. And that's not what we want because we know the more diversity, the more minds, the more people to provide solutions to problems. So what are values just in general? So values are concepts of good and bad and right and wrong. You might not really know what your values are, probably because your parents did a really good job at teaching you what is what. So this means either how you feel about certain things, maybe how you act in your everyday life. These are things that are instilled in you at a very young age. And oftentimes they're hard to identify because they're at the core of who you are. Your beliefs, these are a little different. These are things that structure your understanding of reality. So what is true and what is false? So what you think is a good idea versus what you think is a bad idea. These are reflected of your values. Think of your values as the engine and your beliefs are the steering wheel. And then your attitudes, these are your brakes. So these are learned ways to respond to a person, an object, and an idea in a way that's either good or bad. This makes you choose on how to respond to different things. So why do your values matter? Well, but I'm going to provide you with an example. Let's say your name is Jessica, you're a Black Indigenous person of color, and maybe you're 13 and you're going to apply for a volunteer opportunity. So you go to the meeting and the person who's interviewing you is a French Canadian male. And in his values, what he thinks is it's important to look traditional when you go for a job interview or a volunteer opportunity. When he sees me and he says my big hair and maybe like my lips, he thinks, oh, like she's kind of really expressing herself. And then that person may have the belief that, oh, this person isn't prepared for the interview. This person isn't prepared for the volunteer opportunity. So that reflects in attitudes, which are, I don't get the volunteer opportunity because that person maybe didn't think I was prepared. So these are why when we understand people's values, that maybe me as a person applying, I might understand why I didn't get the position, and the person who is interviewing me may understand why maybe there was a hole in their perception on why they didn't hire me. So these are some different examples of values. Don't worry, I'm not expecting you guys to memorize it. I just wanted to provide you with a bunch of different options. Things like abundance, achievement, fairness, responsibility. These are all examples of core values. So what are your values? So today I'm going to actually take you through a step-by-step process of identifying your values. Now, this is a short exercise and I'm going to use myself as the example. So step one, identify the times where you are the most happiest and then the value that you associate with that experience. So for example, a great experience for me was when I was engaged. That made me feel a sense of family. So there's one value. Two, identify the times where you are most proud and then the value you associate with it. So number two, I'm going to say when I was able to address my faculty during my undergrad and give a speech in front of hundreds of people. I felt respect, community, and advocacy. Number three, identify the times where you are most fulfilled and satisfied and the value you associate with that experience. So for me, when I'm teaching and when I'm presenting and I'm working with my students, I'm helping them solve their problems, I feel a sense of compassion, trust, and diversity. And number four, and identify a time where you felt frustrated or upset, and then think of a value that maybe was diminished or canceled down or told that this isn't important. So whenever I see or experience things like racism or oppression, I don't feel safe and I don't feel valued and I don't feel like I can trust my surroundings. So those are 4 examples or 4 ways for me to identify some different words that represent my values. So now what I would do is I would write them all down. Now I only have 10 minutes, so I can't write them all down for you, but I do have a list. And what you would do is you'd group them all together and you'll see all these different words here or there. And what you'll be able to do is actually kind of group them together into like similar experiences or similar feelings that you have when you think of these values or these words. So let's review my answers. So some of the values that I wrote down in steps 1 to 4 were community, respect, safety, compassion, reliability, accountability, trust, creativity, consistency, diversity, family, empathy, etc. So what are 3 words to represent my values? So they are 1, community, 2, compassion, and 3, empathy. These are like the 3 things that are pushing me forward. So how can I use my values? So just to wrap up, our values affect our worldview. So what is your worldview? So these are our individual perceptions or perceptions by a culture or a group of people about key beliefs or issues. Think about it this way. Our values are our engine, which are propelling us to move forward. This affects our steering wheel, and it also affects our brake, which are our attitudes. So we're either stopping or going, moving forward, this or that. These are basically the core of who we are. So when we understand our values, we understand how we view the world around us. Understanding ourselves helps us do so many things. Let's narrow them down. 1, we can identify our similarities. 2, we can appreciate our differences. 3, we can practice compassionate curiosity. Now, this is actually one of the #1 things I would like you guys to take away from this is what is compassionate curiosity? I talk about this often in my classes. So when we're practicing compassionate curiosity, we're understanding different people's histories. So we're able to ask questions in a way that are appropriate so we can get to know people, get to know people's values. Next, it helps us get to know our neighbors. And last, it can open us up to understanding our neighbors' strengths and becoming a community. I'd like to thank you guys so much for listening to my presentation. I hope you found it valuable, and I feel so honored to be able to share my values with you. And this is just a list of where I got my resources. I'd like to thank you all so much, and I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you so much, Jessica. It's so amazing to hear from you and to learn more about why we need to reflect on our values, because they're so important in shaping our futures and our perspectives. Up next, I'm excited to introduce our moderator for today's interactive panel discussion. Christina Dykman is a senior IT project manager in personal banking products technology at CIBC. As a certified Scrum Master, Christina has a focus on delivering her projects using agile delivery best practices and fostering an environment of teamwork and collaboration between business and technology stakeholders. Christina is currently working on strategic initiatives in real estate secured lending, and in the past has worked on wealth management, insurance payments, and regulatory projects. Over to you, Christina.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Lucy, and hi to everyone who's joined today. I'm very excited to get started with today's panelists, but first I'd like to talk a bit about why CIBC proudly supports Hackergal and Girls Learning Code across Canada. So CIBC has been a proud partner of Hackergal since 2018. Hackergal is doing critically important work that is aligned with our commitment to gender balanced leadership and promoting inclusion and belonging. CIBC is committed to inclusion and diversity. CIBC is committed to building a diverse workforce at all levels of our bank that reflects the clients and communities we serve. Our strategy is driven by tone at the top and engaging leaders as change agents to create inclusive workplace cultures. At CIBC, we believe that diverse teams working in inclusive environments are more innovative, make better decisions, and deliver better results for our clients and our shareholders. The topic that will be discussed with our panelists today is why empathy and inclusion lead to better outcomes. We'll be unpacking the value of creating a more inclusive environment in technology. There's immense value in creating a more inclusive environment in technology. Research shows that increased gender balanced teams lead to stronger engagement, greater creativity and resilience, a more innovative working environment, fresh and different viewpoints, protection against groupthink, better problem solving and decision making, collaboration, agility, and innovation. Being around people who are different from us makes us creative, more diligent, harder working, and better able to solve problems. Women are more than half of the consumer markets and have substantial spending power. In order to develop products for women, women employees need to be engaged in all aspects of the product lifecycle, like development, user testing, marketing, and so forth. This is why diversity in technology is so important. I know our panelists will have so much more to say on the value of creating a more inclusive environment, so let's get to know them. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you Aisha Ado, CEO and founder of Drive Her. Aisha thrives on working to make the world a better place for women. She founded Power to Girls Foundation, a nonprofit organization to offer mentors and role models to young girls. She's the recipient of the Young Black and Gifted Award for Community Service. She was named a Black Diversity Group role model and one of 100 Black women to watch in Canada. And she is CEO and founder of Drive Her, as I mentioned earlier, which is a ride-sharing service for women by women. Welcome, Aisha.
Thank you.
Okay, next I'll introduce you to Marie Calix-McKenzie. Marie is the manager of corporate applications at the Communication Security Establishment, CSE, where she leads technical teams in the development, maintenance, and support of business applications through the full software development lifecycle. Although Marie was admitted to the University of Ottawa to pursue a degree in mathematics with hopes of becoming a math teacher, she ended up graduating with a Bachelor of Sociology and Management and Public Policies. After accidentally falling upon a position as a web developer at Industry Canada, Marie discovered that she had a passion for IT and pursued a diploma of computer science at Algonquin College. In addition to her primary job functions, Marie is an advocate for diversity and inclusion at CSE. In 2017, she was the recipient of the 2017 CSE Workplace Engagement Award for her work as diversity co-champion and her extraordinary commitment to making CSE a more diverse and inclusive workplace where differences are celebrated and appreciated. Hi, Marie.
Hi.
All right. Well, let's get started. First, I'm going to start with a question for Marie. Can you start us off with a bit of a discussion about how empathy is connected to diversity and inclusion?
Okay. Just want to make sure my mic is on. Okay, so as we heard earlier, diversity is about understanding that we are all different. We all have different ages. Some of us have kids, some of us don't. Some of us are married, some others are single. We all have different education background, different experiences, different sexual orientation, different gender, race, culture, beliefs, religion. Like I could add so much. And inclusion is all about accepting people for who they are, even though they are different. So empathy is like key to ensuring diversity and inclusion because it's all about being able to put yourself in others' shoes and seeing things from their perspective. It's about listening, showing some interest, being curious, asking questions, and really trying to understand the other person. And, and above all this, it's doing all this without any judgment. The way I see it, empathy, it's all about being kind. Sometimes you can find yourself in a situation when there is no empathy. You don't feel understood, you don't feel included. But what I choose to believe is that we are all empowered to generate empathy by speaking up and making people aware of how a situation is impacting you. I'll give you an example. So remember back in June with the whole George Floyd situation, as you can imagine, that situation was extremely sad and impactful. There were protests all over the world. There was a lot of chatter everywhere on social media. There was the whole Black Lives Matter movement. During that period of time, I heard a lot of comments from my friends, from my colleagues. Jesus, if you go on social media, it was everywhere. And some of the comments kind of like saddened me and made me realize that a lot of people didn't understand what it was like, how it felt to be a Black person during that time. So I chose to do something about it. I chose to work at making others aware of the impact it had on me as a Black woman. So what I did is that a friend of mine was working on a presentation about Black Lives Matter movement. I recycled that presentation. I worked with some Black professional in my organization where we basically looked at a lot of the comments that we were hearing people saying that were hurtful. And we decided to explain what impact it had on us as Black Canadians. The presentation is entitled Being Black in Canada. And what we did is that we presented it to various of our colleagues at work. And we basically went through each and every comments that we had heard that were impacting us, and we gave our perspective. To give you an example of comments that we addressed, we talked about why we felt uncomfortable when we were hearing people saying all lives matter. So, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement was all about focusing on the Black community. And when people would reply and say all lives matter, we explained what impact it had on us. We also explained the impact of how it felt when people were silent, where all this was happening and people were not reaching out to us to see how we were doing with all this. So it helped my colleagues understand my perspective as a Black person. I think that it helped them be more, have more empathy towards us during those times, to the point that a couple of weeks ago in Ottawa, there was an event, a verdict that was given that impacted the Black community. And needless to say that a couple of my colleagues actually reached out to me to ask me how I felt, if I was okay, how everything was impacting us. So all this to say that empathy is key to diversity and inclusion because it allows you to put yourself in other person's shoe. And I also want to make sure that you all know that you are also all empowered to generate empathy when it's not there so that people understand your perspective.
Sorry, I was still on mute. Thank you, Marie. That was really great. Aisha, is there anything you wanted to add to that, first of all, before we move on to the next question?
No, I think you summed that up like really beautifully, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so as CEO, how do you and your organizations celebrate the diversity of people and ideas in your day-to-day?
Wow. First of all, I'd like to say a big thank you to Hackergal for creating the space for us to actually even have this conversation. I think that's really important. Next thing, again, like thank each and every one of you for being here and for being present. I think one of the things that, you know, a lot of times when we talk about diversity, it kind of like also reminds me around, you know, the issues that women face around the world, right? So to me, it's a direct correlation to the conversation around equity and how we are creating equitable spaces, right? So for me, when, you know, the idea of Drive Her came about specifically, what I was thinking about was, you know, women and girls and all the different folks that are people that identified as women and how, you know, their day-to-day transportation, you know, is affected, right? But then one of the key things that I think is vital for us to talk about, and it actually is in connection to some of the things that Barry spoke about, is around empathy. And I think empathy and diversity in itself is so vital and is so connected because we cannot create something personally. I cannot create something that I'm not directly affected by. I cannot create change in areas that I'm not directly affected by. And that's part of the reason why when you see change makers, when you see activists and all of these folks that are creating change, they're creating change based off of like issues that they are directly affected by, things that, you know, affect them directly, things that if, you know, it was to happen any other way, they're not going to be able to survive either, right? So for me, when I created Power to Girls, when I created Drive Her, it was all as a result of personal experiences. And I think that's one of the things that really allowed for me to connect with our customers and connect with the people that, you know, the people that participate in our programs so well, is because before I am anything else, I am a customer, right? So that's kind of like how I'm connected to that. And that's how we make sure that as an organization, as a company, we're able to navigate all of those different spaces and ensure that we're not only creating a safe space for others, but then we're also creating a safe space for ourselves.
That's great, thanks. Marie, is there anything you would like to add that your organization may be doing to celebrate and recognize diversity as well? I think you might still be on mute.
There we go.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
So as you know, CSC is a government organization, and we're very lucky that our employer gives us some times to celebrate our differences. Well, let me answer twofold. So I personally ensure that there is diversity of ideas in my own organization by making sure that my team is diverse. So I make sure that I hire people from different age, culture, education, experience, backgrounds. So, I can go through the list. And I also make sure to hire and include people that do not see things the same way I do. So my biggest critic is usually somebody that I will include and talk to because they're obviously seeing something that I can't see. So it's so important for me to have that opposite, well, what I think is an opposite view of things, but I guess it's a complement view of things, and I think that it helps make whatever I do a bit stronger. So the other thing too is that I make sure that we create an environment where it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail. Failing, making mistakes, it's a way to learn. And I think that if you create a space where people know that it's okay to maybe not get it the first time, it will allow people to be more, have different ideas and think outside the box. What my organization actually does to celebrate diversity is that we celebrate so many things. For example, we have activities and events around the National Indigenous Month. We celebrate Black History Month. Anything to do with women, so the International Women's Day, Pride Week, the National Accessibility Week, and my personal favorite, the annual Multiculturalism Day Festival. So basically, it's a day in June where we ask people from different backgrounds, different cultures to come in and celebrate their cultures, either by wearing the outfits from their cultural background, by cooking food from their background. So I'm from Haiti myself, so I bring some Haitian patties. I bring some Haitian cake and one of our favorite drinks, the crémasse. And I get to see my colleagues trying out, tasting it out, a bit of who I am. The other days that we celebrate the International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia. As you know, we are involved with the Woman Hack, with Hackergal. We're involved as well with Black Boys Code to encourage young boys into the STEM field. We have the Cyber Titans. We're involved in Technovation. So basically, my organization is looking for any excuse where we can celebrate that people are different, and that it's a great opportunity for us to learn about the differences and make us be more open and accept others for who they are.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I'd like to get an invite to your multicultural day.
I can work on that.
Okay, excellent. So Aisha, I'm sure it's safe to say we've all been in situations where we've not felt included or felt like the odd one out. What strategies do you use in situations where you've not felt included?
That's actually a really amazing question. And it's funny because it's also connected to like the first question that you asked around diversity. I think one of the key things for me personally as an individual, one thing that I love is telling me that I cannot do something or I'm not capable of something, because that is like my fire, that's my fuel. That's like, I love that. I love being underestimated. And I think one of the things that we see a lot of, especially as people of color, is that we are underestimated a lot. However, one of the key things that I also would like to share about being underestimated is also just knowing your value. I think when Jessica was presenting earlier, she was talking about understanding your values and knowing what your values are. That is one of the key things that I think as individuals, regardless of our background, regardless of where we're coming from, that is one thing that we should never take for granted in terms of like understanding who we are as individuals and what we bring to the table, understanding our confidence level, like all the different things, because trust me, the world, Canada, everywhere, there are so many microaggressions and so many things that are telling you that you cannot be something or you're not capable of doing something. And the unique thing that you bring to any situation is yourself, is you as a person, as an individual. So for me, I think the key thing is really bringing yourself, bringing your experiences, pulling your confidence from your experiences, from your values, the things that matter to you, the things that you stand for. Because for me, my personal values is around creating safe spaces for girls and women. So in every aspect of the work that I do, I ensure that everything that I do or every space that I enter, it is directly impacted or directly related to the things that I find value, right? Not to say that even in those spaces you're not gonna get a pushback, or you're not gonna get microaggressions, or you're not going to be belittled. You will definitely be belittled, but then at the end of the day, it is in recognizing who you are as a person. It is in recognizing what you bring to the table. It is in recognizing that despite all of the challenges, despite all of the naysayers, there is one thing that no one can take away from you, not even the government of Canada can take away from you, and that is you, your uniqueness, you as an individual. No one can take Aisha from Aisha. No one can take anything, like all my stories, my experiences, no one can take that away from me, not even my family, right? So I think it is in recognizing that, and it's also in celebrating that, because we cannot talk about diversity. Yes, we can celebrate all of the different months, and we can celebrate all of those different things, but until we're creating spaces that actually allow for people to bring their whole selves into an organization or into a space, all the things that we're doing is going to be futile. Because yes, there are organizations that will celebrate Black history, that will celebrate Indigenous Month, but then at the end of the day, you recognize that your policies are not actually very reflective of all the celebrations that you're doing, right? So we have to create a culture and create a society that allows for people to bring their whole selves into every situation, be it at work, be it school, all those different aspects of our lives. And I think for me personally, that's how I see that we'll be able to achieve that very equitable and diverse society that we're all fighting for.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Marie, this one's a bit of a two-part question. So in your experience, how would you say our world would look if the tech industry were more diverse and inclusive? And who's responsible for making sure goals around diversity and inclusion are met in an organization?
Okay, that's a good question. Those are two good questions. Let's see if I can bring them to justice. So how would our world would look if the tech industry was more diverse and inclusive? Um, I think that if we were diverse and inclusive, we would see more innovative ideas and innovative products. Why? Because it has been proven that diverse and inclusive teams are more productive. They perform better. Having the ability to be able to bring your ideas and have other people bring their ideas and feed it, it creates a better product at the end. Having people from different backgrounds and different perspective also increases your ability, as we heard earlier, to solve problems, but also it helps to create innovation. It helps you think outside of the box. When you have different views, different people, maybe the box is not a box, and maybe it's a triangle, maybe it's something else, and it allows people to bring who they are and give the different ideas that some others might not have thought about it. The other thing too, as well, is it would help ensure, diversity would help ensure that products are tested to take into account all the various different use. Um, so like I love, there's an example that I love to use, and it's the one from when YouTube came out, where with their app for iOS. Um, they basically realized that after a couple of months that about 10% of the videos were always upside down. And why did it happen? Well, it's basically because the development team was probably made mostly of right-handed folks. So they never took into account that somebody with a left hand would flip the phone 100 degrees and would make the image completely upside down. So again, it shows how if they had a diverse team where you not only had right-handed folks, but also left-handed, it might have been picked up. If, okay, sure, they didn't have it in their development team, but if the testing team was a diverse team that included people that were different, it would have also helped make the product better from the get-go.
We have
So
some
this,
lefties on the side here.
exactly, exactly. And what was the other question again?
So the other part was, whose responsibility is it for making sure that goals around diversity and inclusion are met within the organization?
Okay, that one is a tough one because there's so many people that can play a role. Of course, you have the management and the HR department, the chief diversity officer or the person who's accountable and responsible for diversity in organization, and we have everybody who works in the organization. So management and HR department. So it has been proven that people hire people that are exactly like them. So imagine that if you have an organization that is only let's say has mainly dominantly have white people, and they're the one in charge of hiring, and we know that people hire people like them, how are they ever going to get diversity? So that's where having somebody like a chief diversity officer or having a trained HR department that will give them an idea of what are the bias, that will train them on diversity, it will open their eyes. Another way to address it as well is to make sure that in your recruitment team, in your management team, the people that are hired, make sure that you have diversity there as well. Because as I said earlier, like, hire like. So if you have those diverse people, will hire people that are diverse just by default. Everybody as well has a role into ensuring that goals of organizations are met when it comes to diversity and inclusion, because I choose to believe that we are all empowered to refer our friends and colleagues, people of our own culture who would be qualified to the job to our organization. But it's not enough to have all these people. You just have to make sure as well that when you look at diversity, you have a plan, you have a program in place. It can't be done at the corner of a desk. It has to be, it always helps when you have people that are dedicated to it. Because it's so easy to have a plan, but not necessarily meet any elements of the plan. So all this to say that everybody has a role to play in order to meet goals for an organization to meet their goal when it comes to diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, so I guess this has been a great conversation, and I just want to end on a little bit. Oh, go ahead, Aisha.
Sorry, I just also
Sorry.
wanted to add to what
Yeah.
I add to the last question in terms of like who's responsible. One of the things that I always share that a lot of times people leave behind is the next generation. So we cannot achieve diversity with the people that we have now. Yes, we can, but then it's really and truly about the people that are coming after. And I find that a lot of times organizations don't take the necessary precautions or the necessary steps to ensure that the mistakes that are made in this generation does not happen again. And that means that we are empowering people of color, we're empowering women, we're empowering people that do not identify as women, and all the different isms and minorities that we have to enter into the tech space and the tech field. I get the opportunity to work with young girls from grade 6 to grade 8. And majority of the time when you ask them what they want to do, tech barely shows up, tech barely comes up. And it's not because they're not capable of doing it, it's because they do not see themselves represented in those spaces, right? So two things that I'm going to add. One is that for parents, teachers, all of that stuff, create the space that allows for them to be exposed to some of these sectors and some of these spaces. We all know that AI is something that is coming up, but then AI is also very biased, mainly because AI is designed by human beings. As much as we want to say it's technology, it is designed by people. So their biases and all of those different things are going to be transferred into what that technology is going to do. The other thing that I'm also going to mention, which is something that I'm very, very passionate about, is around mentorship. A lot of times there are people that when they get to that space and they break that glass ceiling, they basically close it back up. And I think that is something that we have to be very mindful about and something that we have to call out, because if we are going to change the face of tech and we're going to change the issue around diversity, then we also have to be able to spend our time to groom up the next generation, the people that are going to be coming after us. And it's not even just about the younger ones, it's also around the people that are in higher positions and the ones that are might not necessarily be in higher positions. How are you grooming them up to in the future take your position, or how are you providing them with the skills and the resources for them to be able to do that? So I think in as much as we would want to put the responsibility fully on the organization, I think as individuals within these organizations, we also have to be very mindful about the role that we are playing around diversity and inclusion. I just wanted to add those two things.
Yeah, that's excellent. Those are excellent points, especially around AI and building the biases, not even, into AI. And I definitely relate. My mother was in technology. So I think for me, it was always, something that I had eyes into, but many of my friends didn't. So it's everywhere. You need to incorporate it, definitely. All right. So I guess a quick call to action before we kind of go into the Q&A. If each of you could kind of pick one thing you could do to positively impact diversity and inclusion, what would it be? Marie, do you want to, or why don't we go with Aisha because you're up on the screen already?
Honestly, I would say mentorship. I think that's
Yeah.
like one of the key things is around mentorship, and it's also related to what I already do with Power to Girls in terms of like really inspiring the next generation of young girls, young marginalized and Black girls to see themselves represented and reflected in all areas of life, not just in technology, but in spaces that they've been told countless number of times that they're not capable of doing. For some of these girls, it might be even as easy as going to university. It might be as easy as finishing high school, or finishing university, applying to university. So I think for me that is one of the key things that I would mention, and because I also think that's something, mentorship is something that we cannot leave behind. So
Yeah. Thank you. Marie, what about yourself?
Okay, I'll take it from a different angle. So I once worked with someone that was very difficult. I felt that they were always on my case. I don't know if it was because I was a woman. I don't know if it was because I was Black. I don't know if it was just because I wasn't the person who was doing the job before. But I felt that whatever I did, it was never good enough for them. So I was frustrated, and I complained to a good friend of mine. And she told me something that kind of stuck with me. She said, Marie, when they treat you like that, just kill them with kindness. So it took me aback a bit. For the sake of this session, we're not going to say kill them with kindness. We're going to say overwhelm them with kindness. And that's what I did. So I focused on giving them the benefit of the doubt. I focused on trying to remain positive, seeing all the difficulties as learning opportunities. So one thing that I think that we can do to positively impact diversity and inclusion is just to be kind. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Try to understand others the way you want to be understood. So my message is to you is don't be afraid to overwhelm others with kindness. In times of adversity, overwhelming others with kindness will always take their ability to hurt you.
Excellent. Thank you. Great advice from both of you. So now we're going to get into a bit of the Q&A. So I'm just going to take a look over here at the Q&A, and we'll bring some out. So why don't we start with, so Marie, this one's for you. As adults, it is important to lead by example. What type of actions can we do to demonstrate empathy? Which I think you've kind of spoken a bit about it. Kindness, asking questions, how people are feeling. Do you
So
add anything else there?
So I am a parent. I have kids, 2 kids. My daughter Brianna is 12 and my son is 9. So when it comes to empathy, it's really taking the time to sit down and focus, being in the moment and listening for what they're saying. I took some training on emotional intelligence. And one conversation that I had with my daughter was about triggers. There are times when we have conversation and we don't necessarily see eye to eye. You might get triggered, I might get triggered. And it's important that at those times that we don't try to communicate when we cannot see each other. So sometimes pausing a bit, taking the time to reflect, to get out of the situation, to gain your markers back, and then reintroduce the conversation where you're better positioned to listen and hear what the other person has to say can make a big difference. So when it comes to my kids, when it comes to empathy, when it comes it's all about listening, taking the time to listen and putting yourself in their shoes, trying to see it from their perspective. I think that's key into helping parents and kids have better relationship, because I think empathy plays a great role there.
Excellent, thank you. And as a mom of 2 small children, I like the advice. Aisha, I don't see you above. Are you still here? Is Aisha still on? Maybe we've lost her. So Marie, if you don't mind, I'm going to try to find another one here for you.
Perfect.
Okay, so what difference has diverse leadership made in your personal journeys?
Wow. Wow. Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So I have a club named the Tiara Club. We're essentially about 8-9 women that all worked in the tech industry. We all worked at CSC at some point in time. And we were all, well, CSC, if you look at our mandate, please take the time to look at our website. We're all about technology in the security and intelligence domain. And as you can imagine, it's hard enough to have women in the computer science field, in the STEM field. It's even you even see less women when you're looking at the security and intelligence field, and as you can imagine, there's even less Black women in those
Yeah.
fields. So we created the Tiara Club as a way to support one another. So whenever there's something happening that's impacting me, I turn to my Tiara Club, which is made of diverse women from all. We all have the background of working for the organization, but if you look at our education, and we have from one of like we have Haitian, we have Jamaican, we have a Ukrainian, we have some white, we have Italian. So we're already diverse ourselves. So it's good when you're facing situations to turn to other people that can help support you because they understand how I feel as a woman. And some of them understand how I feel as a Black woman. So having the presence of that Tiara Club there to help me throughout as I encounter things has been very crucial.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely find just having more women in leadership, and I have more in my current job than I have in the past, is it just makes you feel like you can aspire to do more, like you can get to those levels, and you know, people who are like you are up there too. So
yeah, and if you look
moms
at
managing kids.
and if you look at CSC, our chief is a woman.
Oh,
So it
excellent.
basically opens the door and let us all know that
Yeah,
we can all be there. We can all be
yeah,
chief one day.
yeah, excellent. All right. I've got one last one, and then I think we'll be out of time for Q&A. So do you have any tips, strategies for organizations who are working hard to avoid tokenism, performative diversity, but also don't want to add to fatigue of marginalized folks in their organization?
Yeah, that's a tricky one because you have one part where we don't have the numbers. If you look at a certain organization, they're not necessarily very representative of the community. How do you get there? And at the same time, if you have the quotas, people don't respond well to that because they're looking at it and they're like, okay, well, you only got this job because, you are Black. The way I choose to see it is that you have to start somewhere. If you don't have the token that's out there that's representing, you're not telling others that are looking like the token that they can be there and they can do it too. So you have to start somewhere. And I think that starting with representation and actively working with the people in your organization that are representative, you will give the message to the people out there that they too could be part of the organization because they do have people that look like them.
Yeah, thank you. I see we have Aisha back. So why don't we have one quick final question? We still have about a minute or so. Can you name a person that's inspired you and why?
Oh, wow. My mother actually is one of my biggest inspirations. And I know it's very cliche to say, but it's because she is a strong Black woman. And she taught me everything that I know now about entrepreneurship. She's been hustling, as we like to say, since, I was in the womb. So like, to be quite honest, like my mom is like my biggest cheerleader and my biggest inspiration, to be quite honest. Like I cannot, like, of course there are like other people that are like, in the world that like everyone will refer to. But for me, it always starts at home. And that's the reason why I talk about representation so much, because what you see is, in a way, what you also become and what you aspire to. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So thank you to both yourself and Marie. I think I'll pass it back to Lucy now.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for an amazing panel. I'm just going to share my final slide, and we have Bhavani, one of Hackergal's ambassadors, who will jump on to do our closing remarks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bhavani, a Hackergal ambassador. Before anything else, I would like to acknowledge the webinar and the important lessons that I've learned about diversity and inclusion today. I'm sure many of you, me included, will keep these lessons in mind for the future. A special thank you to Jessica, Christina, Aisha, and Mary. It was wonderful to meet you and learn about diversity and inclusion. You've truly motivated and taught us all truly amazing things. Today, I would also like to take a moment and thank our sponsors, CIBC, FASCN, and CSC, for making this event possible and for giving the opportunity to girls like me to code in this wonderful community. Also, Hackergal has an other series of other live events scheduled that are all really amazing and fun. Our next live event is happening on Saturday, November 21st, and after that, please join our Hackergal Day to become a part of the national movement. And if you want to get involved in Hackergal's amazing initiatives, please visit our website, hackergal.org, to learn more about our program, our webinars, Hackergal Hub, and many more exciting things. And last but not least, I would like to thank everyone for attending the event today. I hope you learned something new about the importance of diversity and inclusion in our communities. I hope everyone has a great weekend. And once again, thank you all for joining us today and participating in this journey.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You did amazing, Christina.
Thank you guys
great.
so much.
Thank you. This was amazing. We should have more of these, honestly.
Yes.
Like what you guys are doing is amazing.
Yeah.
I told my daughter to participate. I've been trying to show her all the fun stuff we do in IT, and that she has a place as a girl. So I'm hoping that we can do more of these events to encourage people to come in this field.
Absolutely. Thank you all for coming. Bhavani, did you want to turn on your camera? I'd like to do a group photo virtually if possible, and Jessica as well, if you're still there.
Still here.
Perfect. Awesome. Hi, Kimiko. I know you're in the background. If you are still there, would you like to turn on your camera as well? Perfect. Okay, I'm going to do a quick screenshot here.
Here, let me just look a little bit nicer.
So we have a couple of attendees still on the line. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
There we go.
Amazing. Okay, 1, 2, 1 second here, 3. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.
Go in the sun, get the sun.
Bye.
Thank you. It was so lovely.